He hugs me like everything is okay. But I can't help stop thinking about the man I kissed. There's a photo of me from that year, sitting on the curb outside my old apartment, knees pulled up, cigarette burning down to the filter. I look like I'm waiting for someone who's never coming. Sometimes I stare at that picture and wonder if I'd even recognize myself if I passed me on the street now. Maybe I'd cross to the other side. I guess I should just say it. I cheated. Not in the dramatic, movie scene way. No lipstick on the collar, no secret hotel rooms. It was smaller, Messier, and somehow that makes it worse. I was with Jamie for almost 3 years. We had this quiet, gentle thing. He'd make me coffee in the morning, always with too much sugar, and I'd pretend to hate it, but I never poured it out. We had a rhythm. I thought that meant we were safe. But then there was this night. I'd had a fight with Jamie. Something stupid, probably about the dishes, or how he never texted me back fast enough. I went out with friends, drank too much, and ended up at a party I barely remember. There was a guy there, Eli, a friend of a friend. He was funny, in that way that makes you feel like you're the only person in the room. I let myself laugh too hard at his jokes. I let myself forget, just for a few hours, that I was supposed to be someone's person. It wasn't even sex. That's the part that gets me. We kissed, and it was clumsy and desperate, and I knew the whole time that I was making a mistake. I could feel it in my teeth, in my stomach, in the way my hand shook after. I left before anything else could happen, but it didn't matter. I'd already crossed the line. I went home, crawled into bed next to Jamie, and pretended to be asleep when he wrapped his arm around me. I never told him. That's the part one can't get over. I kept it to myself, let it rot inside me. I thought maybe if I just acted normal, it would go away. But it didn't. It grew. Every time he looked at me, I wondered if he could see it. If he could smell the guilt on me, like smoke in my hair. I tried to talk to my best friend about it. She just shrugged and said, "It was just a kiss. Don't blow it up in your head." But it wasn't just a kiss. It was a choice. It was me deciding, just for a second, that my own loneliness mattered more than his trust. I can't explain why I did it. I wish I could say I was drunk, or angry, or that Eli was some irresistible force. But the truth is, I was just tired. Tired of feeling invisible. Tired of being the good one. Tired of myself, honestly. After that night, everything felt different. Jamie didn't notice, or if he did, he never said anything. He still made me coffee, still kissed me on the forehead before work. But I started pulling away. I'd flinch when he touched me, or snap at him for no reason. I started sleeping on the edge of the bed, like I was afraid of catching something from him. Or maybe I was afraid he'd catch something from me. I thought about confessing, 100 times. I'd rehearse it in my head, how I'd say it, how he'd react. Sometimes I imagined he'd forgive me, and we'd cry and hug and promise to be better. Other times, I pictured him just leaving. Packing a bag, not even slamming the door. Just gone. I couldn't decide which was worse. The guilt didn't fade. It calcified. I started having dreams where I'd wake up and Jamie was gone. Or worse, that he was there but wouldn't look at me. I'd wake up sweating, heart pounding, and he'd be right there, breathing softly, completely unaware. I hated myself for it. I still do. I try to fix things in small ways. I'd cook his favorite meals, leave him little notes, laugh at his dumb jokes, even when I didn't feel like it. But it all felt fake. Like I was auditioning for the role of good girlfriend, hoping he wouldn't notice I'd already failed the casting call. I know people make mistakes. I know that, but I can't seem to let myself off the hook. My friends say I'm being dramatic, that everyone slips up, that I should just move on. But they don't have to live with it. They don't have to see his face every day and wonder if he'd still love them if he knew. Sometimes I think about reaching out to Eli, just to ask if he remembers. If it meant anything to him, or if it was just another blurry night. But I never do. I don't want to give it more weight than it already has. I don't want to make it real. I wish I could say this is the part where I learned something, or where I found a way to forgive myself. But I'm still stuck, still carrying it around like a stone in my pocket. Some days it's lighter, some days it's so heavy I can barely breathe. There's this weird thing that happens when you're living with a secret. It's like you start seeing the world through a foggy window, and everyone else is just moving around in the clear air. I'd catch myself zoning out at work, staring at my computer screen, replaying that night in my head like some kind of punishment. I get stuck on the smallest details, Eli's cologne, the way the kitchen light flickered, the taste of cheap vodka on my tongue. Sometimes I'd forget what I was supposed to be doing and just sit there, lost in it, until someone snapped me out of it. Jamie started noticing, eventually. He'd ask if I was okay, if something was wrong at work, if I was mad at him. I'd always say no, I'm fine, just tired. That became my answer for everything. Just tired. I said it so much it stopped meaning anything. I started avoiding things that used to make me happy. I stopped going out with friends, stopped inviting people over. I'd make excuses, work, headaches, whatever. The truth was, I didn't want to risk running into Eli or anyone who might know. I didn't want to be reminded. I didn't want to see myself through their eyes. There was this one night, maybe 6 months after it happened, when Jamie suggested we go out for dinner. He picked this little Italian place we used to love, the kind with candles on the tables and old black and white photos on the walls. I remember sitting across from him, watching him twirl spaghetti around his fork, and feeling like I was watching a movie of my own life. I kept thinking, he has no idea. He's just here. He trusts me. I almost told him right there. The words were right on the tip of my tongue. But I couldn't do it. I just smiled and asked if he wanted dessert. I think that's when I realized I wasn't just punishing myself, I was punishing him too. I was holding him at arm's length, keeping this wall between us, and he didn't even know why. He just thought I was stressed, or distant, or maybe falling out of love. I could see it in his eyes sometimes, this quiet confusion, like he was trying to solve a puzzle with half the pieces missing. I started having these little panic attacks. Not the dramatic, movie kind, just this tightness in my chest, this feeling like I couldn't get enough air. I'd go to the bathroom at work and just sit on the floor, counting my breaths, trying to convince myself I wasn't dying. I never told anyone about that part. It felt like one more thing I didn't deserve help with. I tried to make up for it in other ways. I'd buy Jamie little gifts, or plan weekend trips, or send him texts in the middle of the day just to say I loved him. Sometimes it worked, for a minute. Sometimes I'd catch a glimpse of the way things used to be and I'd think, maybe I can fix this. Maybe if I just try hard enough, I can make it go away. But it never lasted. The guilt always came back, heavier than before. I started reading articles about forgiveness, about how to move on from mistakes. They all said the same things. Be kind to yourself. Learn from it, let it go. But none of them told me how. None of them explained what to do when the person you hurt doesn't even know they've been hurt. When the only person who can forgive you is yourself, and you don't know how. I thought about therapy, but I couldn't bring myself to go. I was afraid of saying it out loud, of making it real. I was afraid the therapist would look at me the way I looked at myself, like I was broken, or selfish, or just bad. So I kept it to myself. I wrote in my journal, pages and pages of apologies I'd never send. I'd write letters to Jamie, to Eli, to myself. I'd rip them up and throw them away. It didn't help. There was this one night, late, when Jamie was asleep and I was lying awake, staring at the ceiling. I started crying, quietly, trying not to wake him. I remember thinking, I wish I could go back. I wish I could just undo it. But you can't. That's the thing about mistakes. They don't get erased. They just become part of you, whether you want them to or not. I started to wonder if maybe I was addicted to the guilt. Like, maybe it was easier to hold on to it than to actually try to move on. Maybe I was afraid of what would be left if I let it go. Who would I be without it? Would I even recognize myself? Some days, I'd almost convince myself it didn't matter. That it was just a blip, a stupid mistake, and that I deserved to be happy anyway. But then I'd see Jamie, or hear a song that reminded me of that night, and it would all come rushing back. I'd feel like I was drowning in it. I don't know. Maybe this is just what it means to be human. To mess up, to hurt people, to carry it around with you. Maybe forgiveness isn't something you just decide to do. Maybe it's something you have to practice, over and over, until it finally sticks. There's this old superstition my grandmother used to say, if you keep a secret too long, it'll start to show on your face. I used to laugh at that, but lately, I catch myself in the mirror and wonder if she was right. There's a heaviness under my eyes that wasn't there before, a kind of dullness. I started wearing more makeup, not because I wanted to look good, but because I wanted to look like someone else. Someone who hadn't done what I did. Jamie started working late more often. He said it was a busy season, but I could tell he was pulling away. I don't blame him. I was barely there, even when I was sitting right next to him. We'd eat dinner in silence, both of us scrolling through our phones, pretending we had something important to read. Sometimes I'd look at him and feel this wave of panic, like I was running out of time to fix things. Other times, I just feel numb. One night, I came home and found him sitting on the couch, staring at the TV but not really watching. He looked up at me, and for a second, I thought he was going to say something big, something that would break the spell. But he just asked if I wanted to order pizza. I said sure, and that was that. We ate in silence, the TV filling the space between us. I started to wonder if maybe he knew. Maybe he'd figured it out, or maybe he just sensed that something was wrong. I kept waiting for him to confront me, to ask me what happened, but he never did. I don't know if that made it better or worse. I try to distract myself with work, with friends, with anything that would keep me from thinking too much. But it always came back. I'd be in the middle of a meeting, or out for drinks with friends, and suddenly I'd feel this wave of shame, like I was wearing a sign around my neck. I started avoiding mirrors, avoiding eye contact, avoiding myself. There was this one afternoon, maybe a year after it happened, when I ran into Eli at a coffee shop. I almost didn't recognize him. He'd grown a beard, looked older, tired. He smiled when he saw me, but it was awkward, like we were both remembering at the same time. We made small talk, just the usual, how have you been stuff, but the whole time I was hyper-aware of the space between us, of the thing we weren't saying. When he left, he just said, "Take care, okay?" And I nodded. I watched him walk away and felt this weird mix of relief and regret. Part of me wanted to ask him if he ever thought about that night, if it haunted him the way it haunted me. But I didn't. I just sat there, staring into my coffee, feeling like I'd missed my chance to make sense of it. After that, I started thinking more seriously about telling Jamie. I'd read all these articles about honesty and vulnerability, about how secrets can poison a relationship. But every time I tried to imagine the conversation, I'd freeze. I couldn't picture his face, couldn't hear his voice. I was terrified of what would happen if I told him, but I was just as terrified of what would happen if I didn't. I started writing letters to him, trying to get the words right. I'd write and rewrite, trying to find a way to explain it that didn't sound like an excuse. I wanted him to understand that it wasn't about him, that it was about me, my own loneliness, my own weakness. But every draft sounded hollow, like I was just trying to make myself feel better. I never gave him any of those letters. I kept them in a box under my bed, along with old birthday cards and movie ticket stubs. Sometimes I'd take them out and read them, trying to imagine what would happen if I actually handed one to him. Sometimes I'd cry. Sometimes I'd just feel empty. I started seeing a therapist. Finally. It took me months to work up the courage, but I did it. The first session, I just sat there and cried. I couldn't even get the words out. The therapist was patient, just sat with me in the silence. Eventually, I told her everything. She didn't judge me, didn't tell me I was a terrible person. She just listened. She said something that stuck with me. "You're punishing yourself for being human." I didn't know what to say to that. I still don't really. But it made me think. Maybe I was holding myself to some impossible standard, expecting myself to be perfect, to never mess up. Maybe I was so afraid of being the villain that I forgot I was allowed to be flawed. I wish I could say that was the turning point, that everything got better after that. But it didn't, not right away. Healing is slow and messy, and sometimes it feels like you're moving backwards. But I kept going. I kept showing up, kept talking, kept trying to forgive myself, even when it felt impossible. Some days, I still wake up with that heavy feeling in my chest. Some days, I still want to run away from it all. But other days, I feel a little lighter. A little more like myself. Or maybe a new version of myself. One who knows what it's like to mess up, and to keep going anyway. There's a kind of quiet that settles in after you've told the truth, even if it's only to yourself. I started noticing it in the mornings, right after I woke up, this strange, almost unfamiliar sense of space in my chest. Like I could finally take a full breath. It didn't last all day, but it was something. A crack in the wall I'd built around myself. Jamie and I drifted, slowly, like two boats caught in different currents. We didn't have a big fight, or a dramatic breakup. It was more like we both realized, at the same time, that we were holding on to something that wasn't there anymore. I think he knew in his own way. Maybe not the details, but he felt the distance. He started spending more time with his friends, picking up new hobbies, talking about moving to a different city for work. I didn't try to stop him. I think we both knew it was time. The day he moved out, I helped him pack. We didn't say much. He hugged me before he left, and for a second, I almost told him everything. I wanted to apologize, to explain, to ask for forgiveness. But the words stuck in my throat. He just squeezed my hand and said, "Take care of yourself, okay?" I nodded, and that was it. The door closed, and I was alone. I thought I'd feel relief, or maybe grief, or some big, cinematic emotion. But mostly I just felt tired, like I'd been holding my breath for years and finally let it out. I sat on the floor of our empty apartment and cried. Not for Jamie, not even for what I'd done, but for all the time I'd spent hating myself. For all the ways I tried to punish myself, thinking it would somehow make things right. I kept going to therapy. I kept writing, even when it felt pointless. I started talking to friends again, letting them in a little more. I told my best friend the whole story, finally, and she just hugged me and said, "You're not the only one, you know." That helped in a way, knowing I wasn't alone in my messiness. Forgiveness didn't come all at once. It was more like a series of small moments, catching myself laughing at something stupid, feeling the sun on my face, realizing I'd gone a whole day without thinking about that night. I started to believe, just a little, that maybe I deserved to be happy. Or at least, that I didn't deserve to be miserable forever. I still think about Jamie sometimes. I wonder if he's happy, if he found someone who makes him feel safe and seen. I hope he did. I hope he knows that I loved him, even if I didn't always show it the right way. I hope he forgave me in his own way, even if he never knew what for. There are days when the guilt creeps back in, when I catch myself replaying old memories, wishing I could rewrite them. But I'm learning to let those moments pass. To remind myself that I'm more than my worst mistake. That I'm allowed to move forward, even if I don't have all the answers. Sometimes I still see that old photo of me on the curb, cigarette in hand, waiting for something. I want to reach back in time and tell her it's okay. That she's going to mess up, and it's going to hurt, but she'll survive. She'll find a way to forgive herself, even if it takes longer than she thought. I don't have a neat ending. I'm still figuring it out, still learning how to be gentle with myself. But I'm trying, and for now, that's enough.